right, and welcome everyone for episode 18. And I think I've called this 3D printing from scepticism to acolyte. I'm joined by my lovely co-host as well, as always. Sorry, Hayden Walduck. How you going, mate?
Hey, g'day.
Excellent. That's the energy that I'm loving. I know you're full of pain meds right now, and was it the second surgery just happened?
No, it's a few weeks away.
Ah, shit. All right. Well, then you'll be even more happy in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And we're joined as well. You guys have heard his sultry tones, and I think it was about like 5 podcasts ago or something like that. Mr. Alex Terrasson, how you going, mate?
Hi, thanks for having me. I am on no painkiller right now. I am fully aware, fully conscious.
We'll see.
I love it. Alrighty, so what's been happening? I've got a note to myself. It's like life in 40k, but maybe we'll jump with you, Alex. What's been happening in your world, mate?
In my world, non-40k wise, I've taken a bit of a break after going to Europe in August. Spent a month in France. It was great to catch up with family and friends. And then I started a new job, which pays a lot better. So I'm not going to say no to that. And 40k wise, I'm straight
only
back
fans,
to
yeah.
it. Only fans pays well. Yeah. And yeah, 40k wise, slowly getting back into the game after a break. So playing combat, which I've always liked more, and putting my orcs back on the table, which I think we might quickly brush on the team event last weekend in a few minutes.
Yeah,
so,
we will.
So
That's right.
Perfect.
I do like how you've gone from GSC to orcs, and
yeah, you couldn't go further away from each other in terms of armies, you know.
I mean, if you played Aberrant Spam, they're pretty close to each other.
Yes, but that was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, your first few armies was like lots of Aberrants. Like in 10th, I remember playing against it, remember? You had the double Aberrant brick.
Yeah, I started with 3 in 9th, I think, in the last book, and then I went down to 2, and it was actually probably the funnest iteration of GSC I played. That was a great army.
Yeah. No, I liked it. All right, Duck Mate, what have you been up to?
I have not been playing GSC or Orcs because I despise both factions. I have been just recovering and painting. I've been under a mountain of painting for a couple of different jobs, which I'm slowly sort of starting to get through and see a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. I can get on to my next project, which is a Chaos Demon sort of Monster Mash army, which I'm looking forward to painting. And yeah, just life just been chill and just been recovering. There's not much I can do.
Mm-hmm. I know I briefly asked you this, but I'm sure other people are interested. Like, how do you paint with, like, in essence, one hand?
I shove a pillow like right up under my armpit with my right arm, which sort of just holds it in place of where I need to paint. And then just your normal painting techniques, anchoring both elbows to the desk or your chair, and then a second anchor point with your wrists together, and you get incredible stability. Even with a bung shoulder, you still get enough stability to do like Space Marine eye lenses and fine detail. Just takes me a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Because so I'm just painting at a normal person's face.
Yeah. I remember, and you probably you guys might be a bit young for this, but White Dwarf in the early 90s or in the 2000s, there used to be heavy metal painters called the Perry twins. I think that's what they were called.
Perry Brothers?
Perry Brothers, yeah, sorry, not twins, Perry Brothers. And one of them, because they used to do LARPing and, reenactments and stuff like that. One of them, I think, lost his hand in a cannon misfire, and he still continued painting for heavy metal for like 15 years, 20 years later. And I always wondered, how he would do it. And I saw there was a White Dwarf article, I think I remember reading, again, this is like 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, where like he had like a almost like Captain Hook style, where he could hold it
Just
and
screws in the paintbrush attachment.
yeah, no. So but he would hold it with his bunk hand in essence. And I always, I just like when people have this, like you had the unfortunate incident where you're not this forever, but how do you continue painting at the top level even though you've been, in essence? So that's why I just asked, because it's come in my head, and I know I'm sure you've been asked this before. It's like, how you're going with the painting with just the one hand, and I thought it would be interesting to talk about. What else, mate?
Look, we can touch on it. Yeah, like that's literally it. Being married in a month, so that's all systems go at home to get that prepared, which is
Very good.
fun and stressful, very very stressful. They say like the top 3 things of like the most stressful events of your life is like buying a house, planning a wedding, and retiring. So I'm doing one of those 3 at the moment, and it's not retiring.
So, but you've already bought your house.
Yeah. Painting. So this just came to mind because I was doing a lot of painting today. I'm currently painting a Grey Knight commission for a gentleman in the Northern Territory, and he wanted a warm pinky purple with like molten lava sort of weapons, which is
he's full
really
on
cool.
pride.
Really really nice. Yeah, full pride. You guys will probably never see it, which is a bit unfortunate. But yeah, like, I was doing all the silver sort of mechanical bits on the Dread Knight, and I'd already come through and done all my airbrushing of the armor, so all these bits were purple, and I've played around a little bit with my dilution of my silver and put it over where it covers the flat bits quite nicely, but I'm not too worried about blocking in the whole colour because I'm going to put a wash over the top of it, so any sort of purple that I missed or would shine through would just be washed out when I put the wash over it. So cutting a lot of corners that honestly you wouldn't realise you don't need to paint until you've done it a few times, and don't need to paint that little bit. I won't see it, or the next coat will cover it.
Yeah, well, I mean,
getting
you've
the
shared
method
the
in the
pictures.
right order.
Yeah, you've shared the pictures, and they look fucking sick.
Well, it's a shame none of you guys will probably get to see them. They're going to get sent up to Northern Territory, and we don't sort of bridge up there very often. So I'm hoping he'll come down and play an event down here so we can see him on the table.
Yeah. Because didn't NT bring a team for ATC this year? Or did they miss out? That's why the Mercs played.
I think they missed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they missed this year, and they're aiming to bring one next year.
Yeah.
2024.
Awesome. All right. Well,
But
for me,
me.
I'm parenting, working, and occasionally playing 40k. And just thinking up different ideas for the podcast, and talking to the community, and still trying to get games at Erik's. Keeps dodging me, that bastard. No. I just need to keep stealing more ideas from him. And talking about that, we'll go straight into the Gladiator gaming event that happened this weekend that just passed. And it was a great event, as always. Josh puts on a great shindig. I did notice that the steak sandwich has gone from the menu, which was interesting.
Because it was taking too long, that was holding up the food chain. That's what was delaying the last set, so it's been taken off the menu.
Excellent. So for the 6 people that did steak sandwiches, including Rory, twice, it's your fault.
Yeah, man, you're the problem.
So I took, and I've been asked by 4 different people now about the list, and all 4 of them, and anyone who ever asks, I always make sure I said this was inspired 100% by Erik, and it was an interesting list. It's a Nexus Tyranid list, so Nexus detachment Tyranid list, very much relying on kind of mortal wound and battle shocking. It was fun. I enjoyed it. But I've moved on, and I'm coming up with a assimilation swarm list. It's the last one of the detachments and Tyranids that I haven't really fully explored. I've only had the one game for Simulation Swarm, so I'm going to look into that. What about you, Alex, mate? What did you take?
Yeah, as I alluded before in the intro, took the orcs. Took kind of an aggressive list, which I think is what you want to be looking for in team with orcs. So you get a good table, hopefully a good mission and a decent matchup, and then you launch forward. So I was heavy on pigs. I think I had 15 pigs. I had Mozrog, which is an absolute gem in the book. It's so hard to kill. And then some knobs to go through walls, kill some things in melee with war bosses, and then flash gits, which I didn't think they would be good one day, but they have been, and they are actually my MVP in most games.
Mm-hmm. They were sick in our game that we played.
Yeah. And that was one of my first games when I came back to orcs, and now I think I got a bit more proficient in using them, and they have an insane kill count.
I love it. I think I was next to you in one of the games, and I looked over at your table, or you were nearby, and you had, is it Mozrog, the guy, like the big squig guy with a big orc on the back? That's Mozrog?
Yeah, that's a Mozrog strike bike. Yeah.
I can't remember. Maybe you were playing against GSC or something, but you were playing against something, and you had Mozrog on your backfield objective, just standing there. And I was trying to work out why is Mozrog all the way back here?
Yeah, so that was on 4, I think, on the Saturday morning when we played Pub Hammer, and I got paired into Demons. Pretty good list.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew, I think, the matchup was favoring me, and so he chose to play very defensive. All of his big demons were essentially on his home objective. And what he was doing was he actually had a crazy amount of trash in the list. He was possibly 9 or 10 units of just Nurglings and Nurgle Beasts and Blue Scribe. And he was dropping this like in my deployment zone with a 3-inch deep strike every turn to like do some teleport armor and some behind enemy lines, or engage, I think it was. So I had to keep some stuff too, because I can't really screen out all of the board with my orcs. Like it's not really how the list work, because I want to have some stuff forward. So I had to keep a few things back to mop up every turn what he sent, and I think Mozrog was on the job.
That's the funniest thing. It's like the big bad war boss sitting out back, just cleaning up little shit while everyone else is having fun.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's the most lore unfriendly thing I've ever heard of.
He's just guarding the
This
zinger
is
boxes.
something great about team, like in some games you don't go with the idea of winning, you go with the idea of scoring as many points as you can.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so
100%.
As the opponent of this, in this situation, I have to react to it and make sure it doesn't actually score too many points. And so you get this weird situation where like possibly your biggest hammer in the list is just on mop-up duty to clean up trash in the backfield instead of, like killing bloodthirsters.
Yeah. I literally did an entire episode on that. I think it was 2 episodes ago. It was where I was talking about the TNO. Which one was it back? Maybe the Welcome Back Grab Bag one. Anyway, 100% I agree. And I thought what you were doing had a reason. I just wanted to hear it kind of from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Yeah. So, I was also really excited. Sorry, I did cut you off. Alex, is there anything else about the weekend that you wanted to talk about before I jump into the next one?
Well, you kind of said it. Josh ran a great event. So big thanks to him. It was super tight. Everything was on time. Terrain was perfect. I had 5 good games with 5 good opponents. And we were lucky enough to take the win. Actually, one of the 2 Ethos team that we sent.
Yeah. Well, my Ethos team was me and then 4 other people.
Technically correct,
That's right. It was because I was captaining. I had 2 people. Their first team event, well, one of them was the first team event ever, and the other, Kevin, it's his first team event for like 3 editions. And then Rory and Michael, who are great. Yeah. And Jono, just he's a shout out, mate. That was I think his second tournament ever. He's getting back into 40k. He used to play very casually in the past, and he's definitely his first team event he's ever played. And yeah, he did in one of the rounds. He flipped a Elder game. He went first and just went full send against Elder. The Elder fucked up, and then he was playing World Eaters and just wiped the floor. And he was going in with like under the bus, and he came back with a 17-3 win. And I was like, good job, mate. He was fucking over the moon.
That's super cool.
Yes, take that, Elder.
That's right. Fuck you, Elder. Anyway.
Truth is, right now, no one believed it at the start of the edition, but Melee actually has some play.
Yeah, it's getting
some
there.
People are too confident in their games, and sometimes they get run over, in 2 turns.
Yeah, look, in the very start of the edition, though, when Elder were at their peak, I don't know anything could have beaten that. Like,
no, it was tough, right? I guess GSC had like close games into Eldar, but these 2 armies were kind of at the top.
Yeah, well, I mean, just Elder specifically, like you saw in WTC, even after the second nerf by the time WTC happened, every single team still had Elder, and they were the absolute guns. Other than the mirror, the Elder matchup losing was rare, and it was something to talk about. Like fucking Liam's big wins against some of the Elders because they fucked up, and then the Necron Swarm gets them.
Yeah. Liam got a 12 against Eldar from Austria, and that was huge.
Yeah.
Because I think that was one of the guys that went to the finals of War Master. So
yeah, he won the whole thing. Yeah. Awesome. All right, so I was excited about Josh's announcement for the future as well. At the end of the day, like end of day 2, I'm sure people in Southeast Queensland would be very interested in this, where he's in essence put the call out to that Gladiator Gaming, in essence his org that he's organised for himself, because he's not part of any particular club or anything like that. He does play with the Toowoomba boys a lot, but that's because where he lives. But he wants to start supporting smaller TOs that want to actually start doing some stuff, both in not just in terrain support, but maybe in seed money, so that they can start organising their own terrain. I thought that was fantastic. It's a divestment of the way I would say it. This is a terrible way of saying it, but it's like centralizer power, so to speak. Right now there's 2 main groups that I see that can run really big events at a really high quality. And please, guys, jump in if you can think of a second or third more. But it's TNO, like the Northside guys, and Josh. Is there anyone else that you can think of in Southeast Queensland that consistently can run bigger events with good terrain in a reasonable way?
Established, I don't know, but in 2 weeks, ITA is running a singles event, and they have WTC terrain on all table.
Awesome.
So it's not going to be huge. I think it's 30 people, but I think people are starting to jump in and then are slowly ramping up.
Awesome. And what about you, Duck?
Which is great.
Yeah, I was going to say the ITA, but also John Davidson's been doing a really good job with his terrain. I've been hearing really great reviews from people going to the Oktoberfest event, and just any of the Queensland Gaming Guild. But yeah, it's Queensland Gaming Guilds out at Ipswich at Epic.
Yeah.
I've had good reviews of those as well.
Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to dismiss the other people. Like I'm supportive of everyone in the community, but I like seeing that that other groups. So like what would be cool? This is what they have in the UK, right? And if we can get even close to that with way less population, it's great. But in the UK, they have super majors, I think, every month, like up to 200, sometimes more than 200 people. But just in general, their normal GT is like 150 people, and that's monthly. And so you have a lot of practice at that higher level. This is for singles, and we focus probably more on teams than anything. But it's only going to it puts a lot of pressure on Josh, and then it also for Southeast Queensland. If Josh is not available, or he has to go, let's say he has to do some surgery or something like that, then it puts us as a disadvantage. You know what I mean? Like Queensland as a whole, but also Southeast Queensland specifically, because then we maybe have a little bit of a drought, like 2 or 3 months with no tournament, and while we've got the gaming groups and the support where we all kind of talk to each other and we play against each other across groups. I just like seeing that kind of decentralization. While you still got the Keystone events that he runs, which are fantastic, I'm always going to support them. I like seeing the opportunities for others to step up. All right. And the other thing, well, you heard it, but one of the other things he wants to start looking at is kind of moving away from BCP and seeing if we can do something that's more representative for the things that's actually interesting, or what we in Southeast Queensland are more interested on. We've never been a big ITC group. Our state in general has pretty much ignored ITC. Occasionally we've gone for best team, which Ethos has won, or Ethos / Godhammer Gaming has won, I think 3 times, and only one of those times, when it was at CanCon, did we actually get anything. So apparently best team in the Australasian Oceanic region means absolutely nothing right now in ITC, and so what's the point? Yeah. So I loved it. To me, that was the capstone of a great event. All right. Just wanted to also, before we get into the main topic, again, 3D printing is what we're here for. These two guys are the ones that are actually experts. I'm just here to ask random questions to them. And thank you very much for the people who sent me some messages about some extra questions. I might actually start asking for more user input, not just on topics, but also on the questions on the topics that we're going to go for. The Queensland team announcement. Now, I don't know if this has been publicly announced, so I don't want to say exactly who's on the team, etc. Because Erik has done a fantastic job this year in picking a great team, and to me, I think it's representative of some of the strongest players right at this exact second in that are really invested in 10th ed, that are playing at a high level. And what was also really cool is representatives from I think almost every club in Southeast Queensland, and I don't think there was any double ups, or if there was, I think Alex, you're the only one from Ethos actually in the team this year.
That's correct.
All right, so you and Will, that's as far as I go. I'll just say you and Will working together, and with Will being our captain. And I was reflecting on this a couple of days ago, that 2 years ago, this is when I met Will. 2 years ago I met Will, and he was the coach, which at the last minute then jumped in to be player for the ATC team. And then he turned into the ATC player, and then eventually Australian player, and now he's captain of the Queensland team. And I just think that's, one, it's fantastic, but also two, that's hilarious. Like, if you remember Duck, fucking 10 years ago, when ATC, Queensland ATC, was very closed house and all that, the idea of someone new, one, getting into the team was fucking difficult in itself. I know, because I fucking tried like 2 years in a row and was ghosted most of the time. But then going from getting into the team as a fresh face to then being captain 2 years later, because, lots of hard work and perseverance, that was almost unheard of, 10, 12 years ago.
I think it took Erik and I about 3 years just to get a reply from the current ATC team back in sort of like 2010, 2011. And their reply was like 3 weeks after ATC, and they said no. We're like, oh, cool, I guess we're not on the team. So it's great to see it's amazing to see the change of our scene, to go from a very closed, air quote, boys club to now having multiple clubs represented on the team, and you can see the sort of the nurturing of the skill come up over the last couple of years for the members who are picked on the team. So I think they deserve a massive shout out when Erik wants to make the list of players public, every one of those guys deserves their shot. And I'm glad we have the depth in Queensland that, like Erik and Simon and Liam and myself can take a step back and not play and just be a at-home support, but still have faith in the boys to bring it home.
Mm-hmm. And if they do, which I'm assuming they will, but if they do, it's going to absolutely cement it. Like last year, we played without Liam, and it was a little bit iffy. This year, we're playing without Erik, and without half of the last couple of years' teams. So if that happens, fuck, I don't know what the other states are going to have to do outside of like bombing Brisbane.
I mean, all four of the Team Oz players who took home the gold that year are not playing next year. And if we get a forewarning of Brisbane being bombed, I guess we go to Liam's place on the Gold Coast. Dodge it all.
Oh man, you don't have to go anywhere.
All right, I can sit in my little hidey hole.
That's right. So occasionally you say you're very South Brisbane, and then other times you say you're North Gold Coast. So you could just
until something bad happens in Brisbane, I'm like, oh, those Brisbaneites. Got nothing on us Gold Coasters.
Yep. And one last shout out, the Ollie, I think has been absolutely killing it as the new Queensland rep. I think for the last maybe 2 months he's been the Queensland rep. And I know before he said yes and all that, he gave a bunch of people calls, including myself. And so I had I think 45-minute call with him, talking about through the process of like when I was rep and some of the expectations, and just giving him a bit of a pep talk. But he's been great. He's stood up when he's needed to stand up, from my perspective. But there's also been chill as fuck, and just moving things along. And he's also a great opponent to play against. I played him in the very last round, and I learned what Votan do. I did manage to get the win, but yeah, Votan do a lot of pew-pew.
If he ruins Masters, he's being sent to South Australia.
Actually, the Votan do about as much pew-pew as your Tau, mate. It's interesting. Lies.
Even Ollie would agree. Straight lies.
Pretty much. All right, main topic, guys. 3D printing. So, let's set the scene for people, and I'll start with you, Duck, and then I'll ask the same questions as I'm asking Duck to you, Alex, because I'm always curious to know, before we just jump into like what you're doing with 3D printing, what products you're using, all that type of shit, which people are interested in. How did you find out about printing? Like, when did you first learn about 3D printing? And what was your kind of initial impressions? So, Duck?
Yeah, so before we jump into it, we just want to make this very clear to everyone, and in the wise words of Dale from down under New South Wales, this is definitely going to put us out of reach of any GW endorsements, so hit that like, give us a review, you dogs. So once we'll have a brief intermission for some ads, just to give you guys some time to go like us, give us a 5-star review on Spotify or all your streaming platforms. So 3D printing.
Doug, you got way better at this. You're becoming a podcast monster. I love it.
I know, right? I just, that's because I sit in the room talking to myself while I paint my war dollies. They're not even my war dollies.
On the fly.
I just talk to myself while I paint other people's. I just call Telstra to get used to talking to people, because I end up on the phone for 5 hours. No, so 3D printing. I found out about it through mainly Rory. So Rory was an avid 3D printer of not just 40k, but D&D models or large scale display pieces and all sorts. That man has so many files that you could probably just, if you put them all in a line, you could probably make a way all the way down to Tasmania. That boy has so many files. And from that, sort of got an idea of what it was, how it worked, and saw the patterns that emerged in the community of, the quality of 3D printed models. And, at the end of the day, they are proxies because they're not, the official GW sprues, although some files get incredibly close.
And what were your like kind of what was your original stance on it?
My original stance was like, I pick up this model that's not painted, because Rory doesn't paint, he just prints. I pick up this model that's not painted, and I dropped it on the table and it shattered. And I was thinking, oh shit, I just broke my mate's model. That broke really easily. I threw my monolith at a wall one day and it damaged less than this. So I thought, oh great, this is just a cheap way out of buying any other models from any other avenues. Oh, fuck it, we're getting demonetized from Games Workshop. If you buy from China or any recasters or old mate Chen from Buy Swap and Sell, they're all different avenues to acquire your models. And I thought 3D printing was just a cheap, dodgy version. Just crank out some prints, close enough is good enough, and throw them on the table. I was very against a lot of the prints that were on the table, either being of not the right quality or close enough to the original, or sizing issues, because if you have a sizing issue with your model and it comes down into in-game and you have an argument, you should always lose that argument if you're not the official model. So that was a large amount of things that brought up just on the, not even on the singles tournament side, because Rory wasn't playing a lot of singles, or some of the other guys like Wayne was an avid printer. That man has pretty much a whole 3D printed demon army. Pretty sure he would 3D print a printer to keep printing more. So I just saw these cheap files with cheap resin, and it just didn't sit right with me.
Excellent. All right, before we keep going, Alex, mate, how did you first hear about it?
I think it was at uni. So I have a background in science, and the first time I used a printer was just to do some prototyping. It wasn't a resin printer either, it was a filament one. So, like the little head is like moving around and printing slowly, like layer by layer. And we just used it to do some optical parts, just to assemble like a quick like initial design of a project. I can't actually remember what it was, but like it was probably 9 years ago, and at the time the technology of resin printing was quite bad. I think the one company that was doing it was just using like screen phones, at the bottom of like a resin tank,
Mobile
and
phone
the
screens.
technology was exactly mobile phone screen, yeah. And then I probably discovered it for miniature gaming maybe 4 years ago. I think Lachlan Gordon, a local to Brisbane, got like a fairly fancy one at the time. And then I looked what he did and I quite like it. He did a few jobs for me, and then I jumped in maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago into it. And so initial impression, so I can hear what Duck is saying, like if you print minis and they're the wrong size and they don't look great because it has nothing to do with what it's supposed to represent, I can see why people have a negative impression of it. But you can also see it as just being a tool, and you can use the tool correctly or you can use it incorrectly. And if it's done properly, if you print something that looks like what it should be and you paint it well, like I've never had an issue with printing, to be honest.
Yeah,
like
so
before I started to print myself,
your first impression was a positive one, was it?
it was just neutral. I'm like, oh yeah, this technology is here. I guess it's getting mature because a few years back it wasn't. It looked quite cheap and it didn't really like print well. And there was also no like, I don't know if people try to find like old files, but like 5 years ago there was like almost nothing to print online in terms of mini. I mean, like it was actually all bad. Like the quality has improved so much recently, and I think that's why also a lot of people's opinion have changed, because now you can print kind of whatever you want and you're gonna have a good file for it.
Yeah, and then
if you can find it.
Yeah, I love the stuff that I've seen, and Duck, you've done it really, really well. Is just coming up with little pieces that modify the actual model itself. Like if you're doing conversions and things like that, and like you got those crocodile heads for Chaos Knights, so you can actually find the file that 3D prints a crocodile head, throw it in the Chaos Knights. I thought that was fucking sick.
Yeah, I'm leaning more towards the printing for, and adding a tool to my toolbox of not as much printing whole models. Although, you know, if I find a nice file that looks nice, the scale's nice, I will print whole models. But, you know, I recently did a run through of my Space Marine army. Now, I don't think they've seen the table since, I'd probably say late 8th, when Iron Hand vehicles were like the big meta.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a good like 3 years since my Marines have seen the table, and there was like missing guns, missing arms, some dudes didn't have bases, like there was just general breakages, you know, swords snapped, all that stuff that you get with an old army that needs a bit of love. And, you know, 2 plates and an hour or 2 of searching for files, and, you know, I've got all the missing puzzle pieces to rebuild my army.
Yeah. So that's definitely a positive, and we'll get to that. But that's a perfect example of where I see, even if people are against 3D printing as a concept for whole armies, that's kind of part idea. I'm gonna back all day. Like, you cannot argue against that in my mind. I don't know who to. I don't care who you are. So what were some of the kind of key moments of influence to move you away from that kind of original stance that you had, Duck?
Yeah, so I wanted a guard army. Not really to play, like it was when Guard got their new book at the start of the year, and they were quite powerful. But I just wanted them as a painting project. I think I watched the Brad Pitt movie Fury like 3 times in a month, and I'm like, yeah, I'm doing a Death Corps of Krieg army. My autism just spiked out. So I slide into Alex's DMs, and we didn't, you know each other super well back then. And I'm like, yo, dog, how much to print me like 10 Lehman Russes? And he's like, oh, $350. I was like, done. I was like, when can I have them? He's like, oh, I don't know, Thursday? This was like Sunday. I was like, this just keeps getting better and better. So I think Alex printed me like 2,500 points of Guard, and I didn't have a single problem with any of them. All the models and the sculpts were really nice, the sizing was really nice, and I thought they looked better than the current range of Death Corps because they're, you know, older Forge World sculpts. So that was really the turning point for me, and I'm like, hey, you know, it's not all shit. It's not all out of scale files. There are some good files, and it became a bit of almost like an addiction where I'm on my lunch break and I'm just like on Colts looking for files. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Add it to my cart and just send them all to Alex in a bulk message. And I'm like, oh, collect these on Tuesday. And he's like, okay. So that was the main turning point for me.
I did print a fuckload of minis for you. Actually, it lasted like a good 6 months, right? You were like, oh, Alex, I want this, I want that. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to start sending him like links so he can buy himself a printer.
I knew when I was like harassing him, I'm like 4 files in, I'm like, yeah, print this one too, and he hasn't even looked at the first one. Like, he hasn't even seen the message of the first one. I'm like, oh, I better go easy on him.
What about you, Alex, mate? So what we brought you from you went to, you did the thing at uni. You started just looking at the technology develop, but what made you go, oh, okay, I'm going to actually start doing it myself in essence?
Well, I saw a result in the community of people printing around me, and I thought, like this definitely has potential. Like, it looks good. Like, if you compare, we're mostly talking about resin printing here, but if you compare like the quality of the resin prints compared to something like filament, which has its use, but just different. Like, I wouldn't print like small bits or small mini out of it. Yeah, the quality was definitely there. So I looked into the cost to get into printing, and it was quite cheap. I think my printer was like 170, and then you buy like a table, you buy like a UV lamp, whatever. So it was like under 300 to get into it, which compared to toy soldiers, like regular cost, is pretty low. So yeah, it was like a kind of medium risk, low level investment, which was worth it to me. And yeah, I think since it's been paying dividends. Like, I also have too many armies now. Like, you get kind of sucked into it. You're like, oh.
And so was there an actual? Sorry. Was there an actual turning point that you went from, oh yeah, that's interesting, to, oh yeah, I'm actually going to do this?
Yeah, so seeing the results of people printing around me and looking at the actual cost, which was pretty low, was what convinced me. Yeah.
Okay, so just it kind of just was around you, and then eventually said, "Fuck it, why not? Let's go."
Yeah, I think I was in the same situation as Doug, where I was starting to ask for people to print stuff for me, and like he worked well and he was pretty quick and like good quality. I'm like, oh, I can probably do that myself, and
So,
it will be a lot quicker
so you didn't get
to have
Rory
it.
to print something for you. Excellent.
Actually, I did not know. Yeah, I didn't know Rory was into printing until I guess until and yeah, I think one day he came up with like a demon prince of Slanesh, which was like I don't know, it was weird. He was like a regular size dude, but he had like 100 arms, like longer than him, like in a kind of in a circle. I don't know. I was creeped out a little bit, but no, I did not get introduced into printing by Rory.
I remember that model. It was like a human centipede of arms that made like wings. I was like, I'm uncomfortable with that model being in this property, let
Yeah,
alone
I
looking at
wasn't.
it.
40K had some weird stuff, but this was like weirder in many ways.
Oh, I fucking love it. I like his it was like a Slanesh demon, but just lots of boobies. It's like excessive amount of boobies.
Yeah, that's
That's
probably
the
like
dark corners of 3D
printing.
printing that you don't go to.
Yeah, I was gonna say like
I
printing
can't
did
stop
something.
laughing.
Like the amount of like big titty star online probably exploded recently.
I think we've just turned a whole bunch of people on to 3D printing. It's like, oh fuck yeah, let's do this.
Like, I
No,
can
no,
get
no.
thick anime titties
The
on
opposite.
Shadowsun. Quick, jump on
Yeah.
eBay.
Dude.
Oh, I can't stop laughing. I've had to mute myself like 4 times because I'm just laughing. All right, awesome. All right, so Alex, we'll stay with you because you mentioned some of the things about how you got started and like things that you kind of bought. So do you want to give people a
Yeah.
little bit of an idea? Like it's probably a bit out of date now, but just to give them an idea of things that you needed when you got started.
Yeah, for sure. So you want a printer? They can range between 200 to I don't know, like a few thousands. But I would start cheap if it was me, just because you're probably going to damage the printer if it's your first one. And then you want a few containers to put some liquids because so when the resin gets out of the printer, you have to wash it. And then you want either some curing box that are sold by big companies, or you can also do it cheap, like I did, and buy like a cheap UV lamp and put it in like some cardboard and make like a curing box out of it. And then I think I have to say it. So resin is toxic. It's not something that you want on your skin if you can avoid it. It's definitely not something you want in your eyes. So you have to buy gloves and glasses. Um, and you also want to make sure that you are in a place that is.
Oop, you just cut out, mate. Are you back? Nah, that's right. All right, Duck, you want to continue while we try to get Alex back?
Yeah. So the line he was going on was the resin is pretty toxic. Even the water washable or like water based resins you can buy now, even the plant based resins are still pretty toxic.
Whatever you want.
There we go. He's back.
Did I cut out?
Yeah, you dropped out a little
When
bit.
did I cut out? Well, I'll give the 2 second
Uh,
summary. So
The
printer.
toxic, toxic.
just start from resin's toxic. He's dropped out again.
Ah, this is awesome. I love it. This is like our first episode, if you remember.
Yeah.
It's always strange trying to trust a Frenchman. But anyway, all right. So
I know, right?
Duck, resin's toxic. Keep going, Alex. If you come back, just stop talking. All right, go. Duck.
Don't drink it. No. Look, I know we're going to do a breakdown of costs later in the episode, as requested by Big Sam, Sam Lennon, I believe, asked that question. But we will get back to that. You also need some other than your disposable gloves, like your paper towels and either metho or isopropyl alcohol, which again you don't want on your skin, you don't want in your holes, regardless of which one it is. And yes, safety, personal protection equipment is number one.
And probably don't do it inside your house.
I
Garage,
do mine
outside.
I do mine inside the garage, and without the garage door up and open, it still gets a little bit smelly, but it's more from the IPA or the metho washing liquid, more than the actual resin itself. You can get little sort of diffusing air purifier boxes from the companies that make the printers that go inside the printer, just to sort of eliminate a little bit of that odour. From reviews I've seen online, I haven't deemed it necessary myself, but I know people do buy them, and some of the higher range printers come with them built in, which is a nice little feature.
Excellent. So just to sum up, you need a printer, of course. Cheaper would be better to start off while you learn. A curing box. You need the resin itself. It's toxic. Be careful, kids. And then some sort of cleaning stuff like methylated spirits and isopropyl alcohol. That's pretty much it to get started. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, like everyone's got a USB hanging around the house, which is how you get the files from your computer onto the printer. Some are Wi-Fi based, you can send it straight to the printer through your Wi-Fi.
Yep. So you've got the files, and I think you mentioned one of the websites where you can get some files, but I'm sure if you search for 3D printing files, you'll find it very, very short, very quickly. And in essence, a USB to move it across.
Also, there's plenty of resources on YouTube, which I guess brings us into one of our next points is, on the back of how you get started, is what mistakes you do make and what did you do to get it right. Sorry if I just stole your segue there.
No,
Simon.
Go for it.
I did my first print not knowing anything about printers, and I had a fail, which means the print didn't come out properly for one of many reasons. So I spent like a week just watching YouTube videos, on the commute to work, on my lunch break. All I did was just watch 3D printing videos and sort of picked it up through that way, asking Alex and Luke and other blokes who have a 3D printer for their suggestions and their settings and their findings, and sort of just working through as a community to get each other set up. But as far as mistakes go, there is every mistake under the sun you could probably make with 3D printing before you get your printer tuned in and you get it ready to crank out whole armies in short periods of time.
Is it like the bean that you've said many, many times, where it's like instructions unclear, penis in the printer?
Yeah, pretty much. I made a few absolute doozies of mistakes. So the first print I did, I didn't put any supports on it. It's essentially the scaffolding that lets it print. And for those who don't know the sort of hardware of how it prints, is a metal plate lowers itself down into a bathtub of resin until it gets to, a very small distance away from the screen. The screen lights up with UV light, and that lit up bit of area in the resin cures over X amount of time. Your metal plate lifts up, peeling it out of the little bathtub, and you have a layer. Now, from those, 4 or 5 steps in that method, there's pretty much a fail point at every one of them, and you sort of get used to what causes what fails, whether it be supports or orientation when you slice it, or some actual hardware issue with your printer itself.
Excellent.
Have we got Alex back now?
I am back. I have been for a few minutes, in fact.
Beautiful, mate. Alrighty. So, is there anything else you wanted to add about like how you get started and what you need to do? Because I do want to jump into. You said you've damaged your printer, and I want to know what did you do. It's like for newbies, they're probably going to damage it. What did you do? So, take us through it. Anything else to add?
Nothing else to add on the sort of getting started part. Again, it comes with time, it comes with reps, and you get to feel the program you're using and what your printer likes and how orientations affect it, and what's the best orientation for every sculpt, because every part will have a different sort of optimal way it needs to be set on the plate, and the auto orientation gets it right probably 60% of the time. So something to be mine filled out.
Excellent.
Damaging my printer. So it was like my first print, and I didn't put supports on my models, and I was printing like some Space Marine shoulder pads with the Howling Griffin symbol on it. And I put my print on. That it'd take 2 hours. Went back in like 3 hours later, check on it, and I had nothing on my metal plate printed. And I was like, here we go. Something's gone wrong. And when I checked the resin, there was bits stuck to the plastic film that's in between the pool of resin and the LCD screen. That's called your FEP. And that's made to obviously protect your screen so you're not pouring resin straight over it and ruining your screen. But it also helps the detaching when the plate moves up to detach your layer. I had some fails. I had some bits of cured resin stuck to that plastic film, and I went to scrape it off with the first scraper I could find. Most resin printers, you'll get 2 scrapers. So you'll get one that's like a metal paint scraper with that little sharper beveled edge, and then a plastic scraper. Me not knowing the difference, I scraped my metal one and just put it straight through the FEP and just cut a massive hole in it. And FEPs are $10 to $15. So less than like my first print, I damaged my FEP and had to replace it straight away.
Excellent. All right, Alex, what about you, mate? Anything to add? And did you have any big mistakes like that?
Not as big as running a knife through my FEP.
It was a
Not yet,
scraper,
at least.
all right, calm down.
Oh yeah. I'm sure you went smooth on it. No, I've had actually issues of like punctured FEP. So it's probably the biggest problem that you can have when you print is like when the metal plate goes back down and you still have some little bits of cured resin on your FEP. And that can cause the FEP to actually be punctured, and then you have resin leakage on your screen. And that's kind of a pain to deal with because, resin shouldn't be on the screen. So that's probably the biggest thing that happened to me. In this case, you just very slowly, take some like piece of cloth and damp it in like IPA, and then you let it rest on the screen, and then you wait for the IPA is going to make the resin very soft, and then you can very slowly and very carefully remove it from the screen. That's probably the biggest thing that, like the most annoying thing that can happen to you. But one more thing, like Duck and I are mentioning some like list of failures we have, but you have to treat it as a hobby. Like it's gonna take some time to start to learn it, and then as you learn, you'll make less and less mistakes, and then you will have. Now, if I run a print, I have a fail maybe 1 in 30 times, 1 in 25 times top. Like it's almost continuously smooth. So when you start, you probably get discouraged a little bit, but then if you keep going a bit longer, then you'll get there.
Yeah. Was there anything that kept you
definitely
going? Just on that point, Alex. Like, what drove you after like the first one, which you kind of maybe was shaky, to say, "I'm just going to keep with this"?
Well, it can work, right? And then I think since it's a hobby, people are actually invested in it, and are usually happy to give you a hand. So, if you ask someone, "Oh, I've been having this issue," like usually they will spend the time to tell you what they, probably they have the issue before, and they can tell you how they fixed it. Like,
What about you, Doug?
There is like a sort of community in printing, and it's easy to get into.
So, Doug, what kind of kept you in it? Like after that first print and you fucked everything up, what kept you saying, "Nah, fuck it, I'm going to keep going"?
Yeah, it was a little demoralising at first because I did some other prints. I kept getting lots of cosmetic fails where you'd get a whole model, but like the corner of an ankle kind of sloped off a little bit and it's not as crisp as you want. So it took me a while to work out how to fix those. But the perseverance came from seeing the files and getting the painting and sort of hobby inspiration to do these cool ideas that I have in my head. I sort of sat on this Grey Knight Army idea for, 2 or 3 weeks, and I'd already made the decision I was buying a printer, and I'd got it set up, and I was doing all my initial research, and I had this idea for a GK Army just living rent-free in my head. So the perseverance came from seeing that through to on the table. And
also, I can imagine, I guess for both of you, you're kind of alluding to it. It's like if these other drop kicks can do it, I'm sure I can do it.
That's Simon's words, not mine.
100% my words. I will pretend that they came from your mouths, though.
Yes, it's definitely a hobby inside of a hobby. You know, I've spent more time, researching 3D printing techniques or looking for files than I have picking up a paintbrush for a while there. So yeah, it does become like a second hobby, and then all of a sudden you have all these bottles that are not painted or not even primed, and you have a second army, then a third army, and it can get out of control pretty quickly. So just
And
just
then you have
be a
5
bit
big
cautious.
Terrasson. Don't know what to do with them.
You almost
Pretty
have to
much,
be
yeah.
as quick at painting as you two are, to actually be able to keep up with it. Or
You
have
know, I
full
tell you what.
queues.
Yeah, if you have like a solid painting base where you can just do even like a slap choppy style technique where it's just dry brushing and then contrast paints going over the top to filter it. If you can get to a average sort of quality of that style of paint job, and your printer's tuned in and you learn how to slice files, you can crank out armies so incredibly fast. Like that GK army I printed and painted like 30 GK plus characters in like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like they're not going to win any golden demons, but on the table, they look nice.
Yep. Alrighty. So things that when you're kind of scaling up. So that was your very first idea, and again, we're kind of thinking what you did, but also maybe talking to people who might be interested. Your first purchase might be a small printer, and you're learning it, and you're getting used to it, and it's actually working, right? You've done, and I'll use your vernacular, a couple of plates worth, and maybe you've even got an entire army that you're happy with, or it doesn't even have to be an army. It could be D&D stuff, or whatever. You've got to a point where you're happy. How do you make do you make the decision to scale up? And if you do, how do you go about doing that? Let's start with Alex.
Yeah. So like the market is getting big. You got bigger printers with like better screens and better settings all the time. To me, I think I was pretty happy with what I had, like a small printer, start of the line, cheap spare parts to replace if I need to, and I haven't run into something that I couldn't print and I wanted to, so I've sort of stayed there. I've also made the choice, so actually, I guess in a way it's to keep myself from printing too much for me. I started to print for others. So Doug has mentioned I printed like some guard tanks and like infantry for him. So it's also a way to get the hobby kind of fund itself. So some of my 40k armies, they've been paid for by little like prints doing for the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
I'm one of your loyal customers.
yeah, exactly. So I've made the decision to like keep my my settings like small because I don't have also so much space in my garage where I print. And I'm pretty happy with what the printer can do. When it dies, I might buy a bigger one, but for now, I'm pretty content.
But did you scale up? Did you go to 2 printers, or you stayed with just the one?
I guess I did scale up. I did buy a second one, yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of this is why I was talking about scaling up, because I know you've both scaled up. So how did you make that decision, and what did you do? So in your case, you just bought a second of the exact same one because you're kind of used to it. Is that right?
Yeah, so I bought the same one because then you have to only deal with one types of file in the slicer. The slicer is what you use to convert like a 3D file into a file that can be read and printed by the printer.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it was convenient to have a second one. And also, when you get into printing, like your expectations change. So before you would like buy a little bit of an army and then paint and build for like a few months, whatever. In printing, you can get it all done in a week. And I'm like, oh, a week is pretty good, but I don't want to wait. It could be 3 days. And so I bought a second one, and I printed, I think, like a World Eaters army and like a Demon army in like a couple of days, and it was great.
Mm-hmm. So what was that decision making though? It was literally just that, just saying, I don't want to wait, so I'm going to get a second one. But rather than get a bigger one, I'm just going to get a second of the same, so I can just, in essence, I do my slices, and I just copy and paste, using the USB into one, and then into the other, and they start churning while I then do the rest of the slices. Yeah?
Yeah, pretty much.
Perfect. All right, Doc, what about you, mate? How did you go about making the decision about scaling up? And then what did you do?
Yeah, I bought into the 3D printing hobby super cheap. I was walking to work one day and I saw a notification that one of the Brisbane guys here, Nick Wright, posted his 3D printing setup for sale. And the first thing I did was jump into his DMs and be like, "Oi, don't sell that to anyone else. I'll come get it on the weekend." So I got in for quite a good price, and I found the limitation when I went to print 2 tiger sharks, and my plate is only sort of like 6 inches across, which people sort of wonder, you got this plane that's like 20 inches wide. How do you print it on a 6-inch tiny printer plate? And the answer is you do 8 plates per plane, and that drove me mental. So I'm like, nope, I'm upgrading to a bigger plate. So it was the plate size that attracted me to scale up, and then it was picking the right printer for me and the features I wanted out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So now I can print more models in one go, also quicker because it cures resin a little bit faster per sort of up and down layer. So what my last printer might take 5-6 hours to do, the new one can do in 1 to 2 hours.
Nice, excellent. And so the cost of duplicating your thing, so like for Alex, that's just a fixed cost, and it's still reasonably cheap because you're kind of entry level. What's the cost, Duck, of I know yours was from a mate in essence, but what's the cost of like an entry level one that you had compared to the step up one? Like, how big of a jump is that?
Yeah, so I bought in for like $250, and that was the printer, like all of the sort of expendable bits, like paper towels and gloves. I got a bunch of those, a couple of spare FEPs, all the bits, and also got a cure station. So with the sort of extra stuff I needed to buy to get myself up and going, also came with a couple of bottles of resin, which was lovely. So super cheap, super good deal. So shout out to Big Nick Wright for helping me out there and looking after me. So it's about $250, $300 buy-in on my first printer as a second-hand printer. And then the new one I've just bought is a relatively new model. I think it's only came out this year, with a couple of new fancy little gadgets and abilities on it. So I think that one was about $800, and that was bought for me for Christmas from my amazing, beautiful, awesome fiance. So big shout out to her for funding and enabling my hobby addiction, which she loves.
This new one, it's got the the dangling car freshener, yeah?
Yeah, the little tree.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, what are you talking about? I went and got a purifier from the BP.
It's like, here's some poisonous resin, and you put a little tree that makes it smell nicer. This will do it. This will fix everything.
Got you, babe. I'll put a candle in there.
Excellent. Alrighty. So, the stuff that you guys use right now, I'm assuming you would recommend. Not necessarily that we're sponsored by any of these guys or anything like that, but do you want to actually do some name some brands or anything like that you currently use that you're happy with, or do you want to skip that? I don't mind either way, but it might be useful for people to know.
I use the Anycubic brand, and if you're curious on buying any of their products, I would suggest staying away from their website. It's a bit clunky, but eBay has 99% of the stuff that you need. Obviously, just do your due diligence on whether it's a legitimate seller or not. You'll be able to tell by the price. And the Anycubic website has their prices in US dollars, so it can be a little bit misleading. I just stayed with Anycubic when I upgraded my printer, just because that's what I know. It's just what I'm used to. Alex?
Same as Duck, I used like a cheap start of the line Anycubic, and then I bought a second one. I would recommend them to start and also to keep going because they have like a wide range of offer. I think mine was like 200 when I bought the first one, and then 150 when I bought the second one. Because as like the new generation comes out, like they kind of scale down the price of the other ones. And like Duck, eBay has a bunch of sales often on this kind of product, so you can buy them. To buy resin is pretty good as well because like they do also discounts, and if you buy in bulk, if you buy like 2, 3, 4, then price goes down like 20-25%.
And what about, because I know you've mentioned that the other big purchase that you guys have to continually do is resin. Is there any particular brand or style or thing of resin that you guys use, Alex?
Yeah, so that's more of a technical question. If you want to print like simple stuff, you can buy like the standard resin, like Anycubic makes one, which is called like the standard gray, and it works nice. And then you can go into like a pretty deep well of like what type of resin do I want for what applications. So you can have some resins which are going to be a lot more flexible. So I've seen people print like little antennas on top of a tank, and it can actually like go back and forth, like it doesn't break. And then you can start to learn to mix your resins. But for me, I've stick to the simple stuff, and I buy whenever I want. It comes in a few days. Like it's fine.
And that's just through eBay, or?
Yeah, usually eBay because of the bulk discount and there is a warehouse in New South Wales that stocks most of the Anycubic products, and they ship it to you in 3 days.
Perfect. What about you, Duck?
Yeah, I use the same. So I started on Anycubic Standard Grey because that's what came with the bundle when I bought it. But with the new printer, they sort of recommend the high-speed resin, which has a different sort of makeup to it, which I guess allows it to cure faster, or needs less exposure time on the screen to cure the resin. So it's a bit quicker. But in saying that, it's almost double the price. So you go from about $23 to $25 on your standard resin, and the high speed one is I think $44, so almost double. So you have a internal toss up of you want to buy the more expensive resin, and there's like 12K super high definition resins. There's the high tensile resin. There's heaps of different resins on the market by heaps of different manufacturers, and you sort of just got to sift through what works for you and falls within your budget.
Yeah, I do like the idea of the bendy resin, like a bendy antenna.
Yeah. Luke Pierce used that new sort of high tensile resin for his Keeper of Secrets. And, the Keeper has all the jewelry dangling from their chest or whatever onto their nose and lips and stuff. And he's like, the promo video guy dropped the model from second story balcony and it just hit the ground and it was fine. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And as soon as I picked up the model, one of the bits broke off.
I love it.
I was like, oh, sorry.
Excellent. All right, guys. So I think we've pretty much covered all the main bits. I had a couple of extra questions, but we covered that through the conversation. And we covered a little bit about the financial stuff from. And again, Sam, I've got your question in mind, but what are, like, if someone was looking at alternate to GW, say alternate to GW models, but if forget 40K specifically, but just if you wanted to get models, and you're looking at alternative options outside of, the brick and mortar stores or shit like that, what is 3D printing like compared to, as you said, ChinaCast or whoever the Chen person is? What is that kind of difference between those kind of options?
Yep, I can take that one, I think. So you rely on people making sculpts for the army you want. It's never going to be exactly like GW. I think that's the first thing to accept. And some things come pretty close, but it's going to be different all the time. So you have to be okay with some proxying on the table. But now you can find good options for most things, I would say. And then actually, in some cases, like I've seen like good files for like Bretonian knights, and which are, miles better than the 25 years old GW skull that you have currently, like not available. So you can find, different aesthetics. I would say like the best kind of printing is probably bits, when you get like a different head, different shoulder pads, different base bits or things like this. I would go to the biggest website for this would be cult3d.com. They have a lot of range, bunch of free files, and also some good files you have to.
Cut out again. So I think he's going to say files that you can pay for. Duck, you want to continue on?
Files that you do have to pay for. It comes down to personal preference if you want to pay for your files or you just want to filter for your free ones. But some files can range from less than $1 to, I think I paid like $40 for the file for my tiger sharks. There is a range of what files can cost you, and again, it just comes down to what you're willing to pay for it. I think when you do like a comparison, you can't just keep it dollar for dollar. I think if you went GW's price to sell it or the price to buy it from China or other sources, and then the price to print it, which people mainly focus on the cost of resin, which yes is and can be relatively cheap, but the amount of time that goes in the background of slicing files and then reslicing for any failures, cleaning your printer, prepping your printer, washing the prints, curing the prints, cleaning up any mess that you made while doing it, and then you come to the assembly, which can be a little bit fast-tracked because the bits are printed as sort of individual bits. They're not on a sprue, so you eliminate the time of cutting off a sprue, which if you've built some of the older Games Workshop sculpts before they changed their pellet injection plastic, some of these older sculpts are just a drag to build. Building this GK commission was a nightmare. Just mold lines for days, mold lines in stupid places, and I just couldn't wait to get back to 3D printing. It's like a mold line right up the middle of a dude's face. I'm like, great, now I'm basically going to have to resculpt this face to remove this mold line.
Yeah. Because that's always probably the most... the commodity isn't the... And this is a thing for Australia in general. Commodities in Australia are not the limiting factor. It's actually the labour, in essence. Like, I know in countries where the labour is cheaper, let's say Colombia, because I've lived there, it's actually getting access to the commodities and the tools, which is the more difficult thing. It's not the labour. Whereas in Australia, it's the complete opposite. We can buy stuff, we just don't have the time to do it. So if you get someone to do stuff and it goes, oh, it's only $25 for the resin, and you're using one bottle for this thing, it's like, and my time? And it's like, oh, yeah, no, you work, in Colombian labor. It's like, that doesn't work.
I printed 13 War Dogs for Matt Ollie to take to WTC, and I got all 13 printed in like 4 days. It was when my daughter was quite young and she was waking up every night for a bottle. So I sort of strategically timed it. So I put one on in the afternoon and it'll be done somewhere around midnight. She usually woke up sort of between midnight and 2 o'clock. So by the time I got up and fed her, the print would be ready. I could scrape it off, press print again, and in the morning when I woke up, I'd have 2 nights instead of just one. So that there is way you can expedite and speed up your printing, I guess, sweatshop at home. But as always, it comes with a cost.
Yeah, and it's still effort. It's not even the time from the printing. It's the effort of you looking after it, you cleaning up after it, you doing all that type of stuff. That's what I mean. Like, this is not just here, but the economics in Australia that you have to weigh up to is not just the commodity itself. It's the effort in essence, and it's possibly why, like, actual GW models, we pay twice the price compared to UK. If you just cut it, and this is excluding shipping. Shipping adds, we'll say 5% to it, or maybe even less. But there doesn't seem to be any reasoning for it. Anyway, Alex, is there anything else? Sorry.
Before we go on to Alex, fun little fact. So GW, when they make their casted models, is their plastic that they use for their models comes in little pellets, and they essentially melt it down and hot inject it into their 2-part molds, which is why you get the mold line where the two edges of the mold join. The cent, like $1 per kilo for the plastic pellets, is a fraction of the cost of resin. So the huge sort of headrooms that they're making, like their profit margins that they're making on their models, I do appreciate Games Workshop how they put it back into their, their design team and their heavy metal painters and their marketing and all the new things that they've brought out. But me personally, I've gone from supporting them by buying their models to supporting them by playing the game and just printing my own models.
Yeah, I mean, I occasionally still buy, like, the Death Leaper and the Neurolictors. I got them from Emerald Games. I just liked... I liked the models, and so I'm going to support them. But a bunch of, the Neurolictors, for example, I bought 3, half boxes of the Leviathan. I think one of them was from you. And I got, what's that? That's 22, 30, 33 Neurolictors. Not Neurolictors, Gaunts. Yeah. I needed 66 to have, 3 full units of them. Okay. Hey, Alex, can you find something that resembles this? I'm going to use it on the rare off chance that I actually use 66. I never have, but I have it. That's how I integrate it in my own life, because I do like GW models. I do like some of the alternative models as well, but because of how the sickness in my head, that means I need to have full collections of everything. I'll get some GW, and that's the stuff I'll use on the day-to-day basis. And then the 4th horror specs, which I have 4 horror specs now for some reason, will be, I don't know, China cast or 3D printed or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, the first horror specs will be real, the second might also be real, the third, probably not, and then the 4th, if I have one's like definitely not. I've supported Forge World in the past. Both my Harridans, actual Forge World. I remember bringing it into GW Apocalypse game at actual Games Workshop, and he goes, I don't know about this horror, like, because he thought it was like a China cast. This is a game like 10 years ago. I was like, mate, I got the receipt, because I had taken the photo of the receipt, and it was like, oh, okay. And I said, the resin on this, though, because I do have China cast, at home, the resin on this is exactly the same. In fact, I think Forge World is maybe not as good, but that's a different discussion. Alex, you were going through some of the other... Do you have anything else on the financial stuff?
No. I think I've been cut off most of the episode. My internet is pretty shit tonight. So apologies for that. But financial stuff, no, it's cheap to get into, I still buy GW stuff because some sculpts I just like, and, also hobby supplies like paint. I wouldn't say I don't support GW at all. They make good games, and I think you kind of have to, find your balance into what you want to give them and what you don't want to. And any answer is fine,
And then the China cast versus 3D printing, where's that balance?
When I want a sculpt and the model is, $130 for a small character, I'm probably gonna go China.
And you wouldn't do 3D printing on that?
It depends. For a single character, I feel like getting a recast is probably better.
Okay.
But for a big squad or an army, I would probably print. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, I've come back from printing in a way. My Orcs, it's probably my favorite army in 40k. And I barely have any prints in there. I like to keep I like the Orcs aesthetic a lot, and so I want to have some of the GW sculpts in there. So it's a fair amount of second hand, and then a couple of bits printed and a little fairly few things recast.
Okay. And I know you've said this to me before, that one of the things you almost never would print are bases, because it doesn't make any economic sense. Are you still stick with that?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, you will actually lose a fair bit of money compared to, you can buy cheap bases on like AliExpress or eBay, or you can print your own, which is faster, but you actually takes a fair amount of resin and you have to clean up. And usually, like, if you want to print like a geometrical object, like a circle or like a square, it's not gonna come perfectly from the printer. So I'd rather buy bases than print them. Yeah.
Excellent.
Especially big ones. Oh my fucking god! Big bases, like if you print them and they're too thin, they're gonna bend, and you never have a flat base ever. It's crazy. I tried, and I'd never try again. Like 25, I could, but then 40 up, no way.
I printed some aircraft bases, like the 120 mil ovals, because I needed some for like some riptides that didn't have bases, and one of them I left in my garage. Just I'd washed it, I'd cured it, and I just sort of left it in a tray there that I just put printed bits in that I don't need straight away. And I came back like 2 days later, and it was folded up like one of those Chinese takeaway prawn chips. I was like, well, that's going in the bin.
Yeah. It would look like a taco after a few hours. Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
I printed some like 100 mils for like small night bases because I wanted like to have like some cobblestone pattern on it. And yeah, I tried to unbend it with like a hairdryer and hot air and time, and I broke the thing in like 7 parts. It couldn't come back together.
Look, that is probably worth touching
on the base topic. I think I said it, but I was probably cut when I said it. But a great thing to print is actually base toppers. So you can add like a lot of characters to the minis. You just buy these toppers and you usually print them like flat on the bed, so it's pretty fast to do. Chuck them on the base and it's gonna look awesome. I did it for like a sister's army. They all have like little cobblestone parts on their bases, and I'm very happy with it.
Excellent.
I just went in on a Kickstarter with Rory, which is a great way to get sort of large amount of cheaper files. So I think it was like 70 Australian dollars each, and we got a couple of hundred base toppers. I think it's like 7 or 8 different themes across most sizes for the base, and one of them was almost spot on to what my current tower is based on. So for that, I don't need to make a tower base anymore. I can just print them. It eliminates the cork and the extra layer of building a base, and just I guess just slowing down my workshop of cranking out models.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I think that's a fair point to maybe like near close statement. Like, if you don't want to print minis because you want to support GW, I completely get you. But then printing is probably still okay if you want to do cool stuff on the bases and cool bits on the minis as well to make kind of the army stand out. Like, it's a great utility.
Or crocodile heads.
You don't have to print a full army. Yeah, exactly. Crocodile heads, like cool shoulder pads, whatever you want. Spikes.
Yeah, I got a couple of ideas for armies that just come in and out of my mind, and sometimes hang there long enough for me to do them. I want to do some Votann on like moonscape bases, and there's an abundance of moon bases that I would just never try and sculpt myself. I've seen some YouTube tutorials on how people have sculpted them, and it's a lot of putty and setting and pushing holes in, and there's more room for error and fingerprint marks and more human error than just printing out a moon base from my 3D printer. So that's you can go down that avenue. Or, I 3D printed my whole GK army that's scaled up to Primaris size. So the Terminators are, the size of the new 10th Dead Terminators. And I don't think I have a single GW plastic bit in that army. It's all 3D printed. And I love it because it just brings my vision onto the table. And when you start sort of mixing and matching with multiple different files and different aesthetics, and you sort of just Frankenstein your own models from anywhere from 1 to 6 different files, is where I think the real depth of 3D printing is, and you can really customize your own armies and really make it yours. I personally hate it if I rock up to a tournament and there's a guy with a very similar army to mine. Like, if I rock up and there's a white tower with orange bits on it, I'm gonna hate that guy for the rest of eternity. I'm like, you.
Probably hate you as well, to be honest. Yeah.
You are now my mortal enemy.
Yeah. Actually, there is a community that has fully embraced printing, and I think it's the 30K people, like the Horus Heresy, because this, like, an Horus Heresy army would be, like 40K is expensive, 30K is like 4 times as much. And I was into like a group chat with some of these guys recently, and like I was like, "Oh yeah, what about printing, guys?" And we're like, "Oh yeah, we are fully on board."
Awesome. All right, look, I think there's been a fantastic conversation, guys. I've learned a lot. I don't even fucking print. So hopefully, for anyone that's listening that's interested in 3D printing, you've gotten a bunch. This will be then one of the many things on YouTube that will help you guys out. And if you're interested in 40K or Ethos, hit us up. Check out the Facebook page. We post there reasonably regularly. I know, Duck, you throw a couple of pictures. Put those pink green eyes up as like, do a gang symbol behind it and say, yo. I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling. But yeah, thank you very much, guys, for the conversation. Any final last words? Alex?
No, thanks for having me. That was a good episode. For the part I was on it, at least.
All right. And Duck, mate, finish us off.
I have a personal painting Instagram page. It's just Duck's Painting. I'm sure we'll put a link in the show notes.
100%.
Where I cover a couple of things from, just my general day-to-day of painting commissions while I'm stuck at home. So I do a bit of painting models, printing models, a couple of little hints and tips, but I will start posting a little bit more regularly. And, just as the final roundout, just if everyone could jump on, give us a 5-star review, you dogs, because I think we earned it now that we've definitely been scratched off of the GW list for endorsement. So show us a bit of love, support the community, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. All right. See you guys.
Goodbye.